Today's video is sponsored by BetterHelp. If you don't know what BetterHelp is, it's an online platform for therapy. Essentially, you fill out a questionnaire of your wants and your needs from a therapist, and then you get grouped with a therapist. The convenient part about this is if you don't like the therapist you have, all you need to do is say, "Not for me," and you will get recoupled with a new therapist. For me personally, I think if you watch this video, you know the ins and outs of my life and how incredibly stressful it's been for the last little bit. For me personally, the BetterHelp was incredibly convenient. So first off, I can schedule it kind of on my break at work. I attribute BetterHelp to a pretty major portion of me pulling through those situations. So BetterHelp, thank you for the sponsorship. And you guys can join 4 million other people on BetterHelp with the link down below. It will give you 10% off your first month. So let's get into the video. Inside of this bag, I have the secret to growing melons, cantaloupes, and you name it, regardless of what climate you are in. And that is what we're going to talk about here on today's video. I have an addiction to watermelon. I also have an addiction to cantaloupe and honeydew. There's no other explanation for my life choices. This is how I am doing it, despite the fact that I am still a month and 2 weeks away from actually getting outside in the garden with plants, which is absolutely insane. I started these in my greenhouse last week. Now, I can see inside of here, some of these seeds are starting to sprout, and that means we are almost ready to put these in the soil. So I germinate them in here because I do find that in the case of watermelons and cantaloupes and honeydews, that the germination rates can be a little bit lower, and why would you want to waste the soil and the space on stuff that may not grow? So by popping it inside of this container with a wet paper towel and then placing it in the sun or in the greenhouse is enough heat without a heat mat and enough moisture to allow these guys to germinate. And I have a mix in here. I have, watermelons in here, I do have cantaloupes, and I do have pumpkins all kind of modge podge in the space. The seeds are so different looking from each other. It's pretty obvious which ones are which. And you can actually just go in and very gently remove the seeds that are ready to go and to be planted outdoors. So I'm just gonna take a look here. Yeah, see, my watermelons are popping off. My pumpkins are still asleep. So I'm gonna do my watermelons today. Yeah, I gotta definitely do my watermelons today. Oh, my cantaloupe is going off too. Okay, so the time in which I actually transplant these up is when my seedlings begin to look like this. So that the seed is black stump, that is a watermelon stump, although equivalent in size. That is the stage that you want to get these guys bumped up into a container. Now, this is where I get really particular. I've talked about these. I did a video on these, how to prevent mold on them, which ones are better, etc. and so forth. For my pumpkins and larger plants, I will put them in this larger size coir cup that is decompostable, but not at the same time. If you want to learn more about that, check out that video. And then these ones are actually from Dollarama, and they are cardboard. And this is what I'm going to be putting my cantaloupes and my watermelons into. Now, I personally find that anything that vines is really sensitive when it comes to transplanting. So the idea of bumping them up, taking them out of cells, disrupting the roots, I have very little appeal to that. My camera didn't record anything for last week, so we're doing this part now. Yeah. I'm just gonna straddle this planter and cry into the abyss of potting soil. This is part of the secret weapon, and that is a mobile container, meaning something you can move in and out very easily. These plants, when we get into tropicals, do not like getting cool. And if you keep them at 20 degrees Celsius, which is 72 degrees Fahrenheit, I think, something like that. If you can keep them above 20, but below 30, you're going to see the best results and you're going to see the most rapid growth. Meaning, if your nights go below 20 degrees, you want to be able to bring them inside. I know that sounds absolutely insane, but that is in some cases where greenhouses come into play. This vegogarden here is one where it has wheels on the bottom and it's also self-watering. So this is really easy for me to move around in and out as needed. You want to have it in full sun for most of the day, or as much of the day as you possibly can have it in full sun, because these plants like a lot of light. The other nice part about this is that obviously vines, they will sprawl onto the ground, and this will allow them to stay upright, which again keeps that container mobile. The self-watering feature obviously helps as well, because melons, squash love water, and if they're restricted in water, you restrict their growth and it just goes sideways really quick. So whenever it comes to stuff like that, you want to make sure they have access to it at all times. I don't use any fertilizers in here, although they are heavy feeders. I just use fresh potting soil. You could fertilize if you wanted to. If you chose to fertilize, don't put it into the reservoir, just water from the top once a week with a fertilizer, leaving this full. Now, the other thing that is unique on this one is that I can actually adjust the level that the water sits at. So there's like a gauge on the side, and I can put it down for less, straight up for more water, depending on where the plant is at and the signals it's giving me. So if it's giving me signals of drying out, I just have to push it down. If it's giving me signals of being too much water, then I just have to pull it up. I, of course, missed the most important part about this self-watering container. It's very similar to those 5-gallon pail bucket ups things that I have that work wonderfully. I love them. And it's because the actual self-watering portion is in direct contact with the soil throughout the entire system, because the soil goes down the sides into like the watering portion, which allows proper capillary action. The self-watering buckets I do not like, or planters, are the ones where it suspends the soil above, and then once the soil's not in contact, I have no idea how it uptakes water other than the roots just going through into the self-watering portion, which is a nightmare to clean out. So that is why I do like the 5-gallon pail bucket ones and this Vigo, because they both act the exact same. The mistakes I've made in the past when it comes to growing some of these more exotic plants in my zone is that I let them kind of sprawl and crawl into the cement or onto soil, and it made it so it wasn't mobile. So I was transitioning them inside into shelter when it got cool, until the plant was just too big to do so. So that is why a cage of some sort will help. If you're in an area where your night times get around, they stay above 10 degrees Celsius is really important, but they stay around like even 15 degrees at night for 2 months at a time, you probably would be okay with actually just putting these into the garden. For me, I have cold soil, I have cold nights, and I just have an overall cold average throughout most of the months, other than pretty much August and July. So that is why I choose to go mobile with my container, and it does make a pretty big difference. I hope you guys grow some sort of bizarre vine this year. If you do, then comment down below what you're growing. And if you want to learn more about how Epsom salt sprays may or may not help your vines, then you want to check out this video right here. I didn't even know butterflies were out yet.
Long time ago.
Wow, I don't pay attention.